For hundreds of years, people from all over the world have been solving riddles by using logic and critical thinking. But what if solving a riddle only leads to more questions? Do you possess the same logic skills that first graders in China have to explain this complicated riddle? Or will it leave you scratching your head for all eternity? Don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to join us on the bright side of life. So, why are people so attracted to riddles, and what's the point of doing them? Riddles are essentially word problems or puzzles that force us to use mathematical or deductive reasoning to solve them. There are three different kinds of riddles: metaphors, enigmas, and conundrums, which are basically riddles that consist of wordplay. People have been writing and solving riddles for centuries. The oldest riddle we know of dates back to ancient Mesopotamia and the city of Lagash, circa 2350 BCE, and it was written down on a clay tablet. It reads, "Its canal is A, its god is B. Its fish is C, its snake is D. You are looking for a city that lies on Canal A, whose local god is B, and whose symbolic animals are C and D." A little confusing to understand, isn't it? While this riddle may not make sense to us, it has a lot of similar components to the basic riddles we see in schools, newspapers, and magazines today. Over the years, riddles have become more challenging and fun and are often used in schools to help youngsters develop their logic skills. But even adults still enjoy solving riddles, as they're thought to help people keep their memories and overall brain power strong. If you search online, it's easy to find a multitude of fun riddles to stump even the most logical of thinkers. But recently, one particular interesting riddle that's been used to test the logic skills of first graders in China has been taking the internet by storm. Here's the riddle. If a ship had 26 sheep and 7 goats on board, how old is the ship's captain? After hearing about this riddle in China, many internet users around the globe attempted to figure it out. One approach to solving the problem is by doing a little bit of math, as one person online did. They claimed that if you add up the combined average weight of these animals, it would likely come to almost 17,000 pounds. Now that's a heavy load. But what on earth does the weight of the animals on the ship have to do with the captain's age? That question is what had internet users all over the world scratching their heads. Another approach to solving the riddle is to manipulate the numbers in the equation. For a ship to carry over 11,000 pounds, its captain has to have been licensed to drive a boat for at least 5 years, and a boat captain must be no younger than 23 years old. That means that the captain in this riddle has to be 28 years old. Sure, this all makes sense once it's explained, but it's hard to believe that anyone, let alone children in first grade, could make this massive jump in logic, not to mention the fact that they just happen to know specific boating rules and regulations. While these young Chinese children couldn't necessarily solve the riddle, they tried their hardest by manipulating numbers and using critical thinking. Pretty impressive, right? But what's even more mind-blowing is that this riddle didn't originate in China. It was first used in France back in 1979 to test the problem-solving skills of first and second graders. And according to past accounts, these children who were asked this riddle nearly 40 years ago actually took mathematical steps to solve it. Well, most of them anyway. The researchers who first proposed this riddle to first and second graders back in 1979 expected most, if not all, of the kids to say there wasn't enough information to solve this riddle. But to the researchers' surprise, 3/4 of the kids tried using math to come up with an answer, even if it was a wrong one. An example of such an attempt was this. The captain is 26 years old, so add 10 and you get 36 years old. Even though this attempt was incorrect, it still showed that students still thought to manipulate the numbers in an attempt to find an answer. Very few students questioned the riddle and its validity. It's easy to assume that this original group of kids in France must have had a fluke result and happened to guess the riddle's answer. They just had beginner's luck, right? Wrong. The same study was replicated in larger groups in France, Switzerland, and Germany, and guess what? Just like the original result, the majority of kids attempted to manipulate the numbers to answer the riddle. Rarely did any kids throw up their hands in the air and shout, "There's just not enough info!" This mind-boggling riddle has recently gone viral, and it's been written about in highly respected publications like the South China Morning Post, RT, the BBC, and even the Washington Post. People are continually fascinated by the fact that children innately use mathematical reasoning to solve the riddle instead of admitting that there's not enough information provided. Similarly to the "how old is the captain" riddle, students have been asked other riddles in the same vein. Can you solve this one? There are 125 sheep and 5 dogs in a flock. How old is the shepherd? The riddle looks pretty similar to the one you've already seen, and it's easy to deduce that there's not enough information provided to solve the problem accurately. But just like before, students manipulated the numbers to try and find a solution, even if it didn't necessarily make any sense. One student wrote something like 125 plus 5 equals 130, but that's too old of an age. 125 minus 5 equals 120, which is still too old. However, 125 divided by 5 equals 25, which is an age that makes sense. While this isn't correct, you can see how the student took the numbers presented in front of them and proceeded to manipulate them to get a reasonable answer. While this kind of logical thinking may be giving you a headache right now, the same kind of deductive reasoning occurs in some of your favorite Sherlock Holmes stories. For example, in The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sherlock Holmes can tell a stranger's age, profession, and the fact that he has a dog, all from the man's walking stick. Pretty cool, huh? It's obvious that this kind of logical thinking is quite advanced, and it's hard to believe that Chinese students would be asked such a complicated riddle. China's official response to those concerned was that the asking of the riddle was, in fact, not a mistake at all. It was meant to invoke critical thinking in students. The fact that the riddle was somewhat open-ended was all part of the exercise. So what can we take away from this riddle that originated nearly 40 years ago? We've learned that humans tend to try to solve problems using deductive reasoning and by manipulating numbers. This promotes critical thinking, which is important, especially in students' brain development. However, it's important and just as logical to take a step back from a problem and ask, does this really make sense? It's all up to you. When you first saw this viral riddle, what was your initial instinct to attempt to solve it? Tell us your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to give this video a like, share it with your friends, and click subscribe. Stay on the bright side.